Welcome back, everyone. So our next discussion is around scaling impact in uncertain times. And the premise for this conversation is that whilst the need for the solutions around social and environmental issues is growing, the context in which many of them are being built and developed is becoming increasingly complex, whether that's climate threats, the impact of the pandemic, war in Europe, supply chain shortages, or economic instability. Entrepreneurs and social impact leaders are facing increased difficulties. So how do we drive that scale in this context? And we've got a brilliant panel who will be having this conversation. Our moderator and one of this year's judges is Payal Dalal, SVP Social Impact for the Mastercard Centre for Inclusive Growth. And she'll be joined by 4 of this year's winners, Jackie Kankam, the Senior Director of Sustainability and Social Impact at DECIEM, Marie-Claire Kuja, the founder of KujaEcoPads, Martha Montoya, the CEO of Agtools, and Wietse Ransbeeck, co-founder and CEO of CitizenLab. Over to you, Payal.
Thank you very much, Tom. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for joining us in this really fascinating and critical conversation about scaling impact in the face of uncertainty. I want to dive right in, given the richness of the discussion ahead of us and given the insights that our esteemed panelists have. And so I want to start by just asking each of the panelists to very briefly introduce their initiative and talk about some of the main scaling challenges that they're currently facing. So I'm going to start with Jackie, then go to Marie-Claire, then Martha, then Wietse.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Jackie Kankam at DECIEM. I'd say the initiatives we're really working on now are really defining our purpose. And something Tom mentioned at the start was we're in an increasingly difficult time on, I'd say, the social impact and the sustainability side. So you're seeing, the war in Ukraine, Iran, there's all these social movements. And when you're a company like DECIEM, The Ordinary, where your consumers and your staff expect you to talk quickly and be very agile, it's finding that voice and fine-tuning it while also balancing the sustainability side. And then within that, making sure you're integrating all of that into your business decisions. So ensuring that you're not, saying one thing for your purpose, but then doing a total other thing that's impacting, climate change or supply change or your suppliers on the other side.
Wonderful, Jackie. Thank you so much. Marie-Claire, could you share a little bit about what you do and some of the main challenges you're facing with scaling?
Okay, my name is Marie-Claire Kuja. I'm the founder and CEO of KujaEcoPads Limited, which is a social enterprise based here in Cameroon. We are specialized in the local manufacture and distribution of low-cost, eco-friendly sanitary pads made from banana stem agro waste for women and girls here in Cameroon. We have so many challenges, but I'll share just a few funding challenges. It's very difficult to access funding here in Cameroon. And then many commercial investors are not able to work with us because sometimes the region is shut down for a month, so we won't be able to put that money in those accounts at the end of the month with commercial investors. So it's made everything very difficult. And then it also disturbs supply chain because some of our raw materials are still coming from the West, and sometimes when they reach Cameroon, they are stuck in warehouses in Douala, which is the economic capital. Because the region is shut down, we have to wait for a week or two for the region to be open before the goods come down, and it disturbs production process and make it difficult for us to meet up with the growing demands for our products. And then human resources also is disturbed because of displacement of people, because many people have been sent out of the region because of the war.
Thank you so much, Marie-Claire. Martha, please tell us a little bit about what you're up to and what some of the scaling challenges you're facing.
Good morning, afternoon, Martha Montoya, and I'm the co-founder with my 2 brothers of Agtools. We are a platform data collector of the world of fruits and vegetables, the fastest growing segment in the food industry. We collect data and we put them in a dashboard so the farmers know when to farm and how to farm in general for the market, and the buyers where to get the products and how to get the products. We don't buy or sell, it's data across the world of 500 commodities. We can go over many challenges, but I think the biggest challenge I personally see that is deep rooted is the fact that you're a minority company or minority founder in a market that is very white dominant, which is the finance industry. And in general, I see that though we have amazing solutions, we're not taking that serious because we're not kind of the league of the solutions. We might be a little app, we might be a little solution, but we're not we are not seen as the player of the industry. So I would say that it's a bias that in general, there's many other reasons, but I think that the root of many of the things is that then you cannot scale, you cannot get funding, you cannot get contracts. But I think that you're not part of that club.
Thank you so much, Martha. Wietse, tell us a little bit about your initiative and some of the challenges you're facing when it comes to scale.
So my name is Wietse. I'm one of the founders of CitizenLab, which is an online community engagement platform that is today used by about 400 governments worldwide. So essentially what we do is we make it easy for residents, for citizens to participate in local democracy via our online platform. Because we can talk for a long time about challenges, but what for me in 2022 as an entrepreneur has been the main challenge is actually going. CitizenLab is an international company because we work in 10 different countries. And one of the challenges for us is that we have doubled our team over the past year, went from 30 to 60 people, set up a new team in the US. So we are a European-based company, but now we've also a team in the US. And yeah, it's really, as an entrepreneur, the challenge of going from a startup to a scale-up and having to actually really rethink the way that you collaborate, the way that you run your operating system. And that's been, for sure, kind of the biggest challenge to execute well, collaborate well, and yeah, make things happen.
Thank you so much. So a vast array of challenges that we're collectively facing. This discussion, we really want to get tactical and equip listeners and the audience with some concrete things that they can do to navigate these uncertain times. So Jackie, I want to come back to you. And I want to talk a little bit about stakeholder engagement. How do you maintain and grow board level support for your social impact and sustainability programs when there is such economic uncertainty? Oftentimes sustainability and social impact programs are the first thing on the chopping block. So how do you maintain engagement and support?
Yeah, and just for the background for everyone who doesn't know, so DECIEM is a skincare company. Our biggest brand is The Ordinary. So I always like to say it's the cost of inaction. So it's easy to say, like, we don't have budget, and I will say DECIEM, we're quite fortunate because everyone gets it, but we don't have budget and we can't, we can't donate or we can't, invest in sustainability or social impact. But I like to frame it as there's a cost of inaction. If we don't do these things, one, if our supply chain doesn't exist due to climate change in 5 years, we don't exist. So there's a cost there. There's also a market share cost where consumers are like, we are a brand where consumers legitimately, if something happens within 2 hours, we will get an Instagram message. So there's a market share thing where when we don't show up in the way that's authentic to our brand, that's transparent, we're also going to lose consumers and our staff. Like the reason they work here, we just did a deep dive survey, was because like they truly believe that we are using our growth to power good. We have a commercial sales teams that will tell me, their leadership's like, I tell my team, sell more so that Jackie's team can do more good. So I think when you frame things about understanding also like what drives that person. So, speaking differently to a VP of finance than you would a VP of supply chain, right? Supply chain is like, that material might not exist. VP of finance is like, okay, here's the ROI different than you might calculate it. We expect, carbon neutral certified products doubled their market share during the pandemic. So speaking in their language, I just think it comes down to communication.
Fantastic. So tailoring your message, and I think the takeaway from Jackie, I'm gonna hold on to this phrase, cost of inaction. It's fantastic. Marie-Claire, I want to come to you. You're running a business in the context of extreme instability with the conflicts. How have you achieved growth so far, and what's your advice to other social entrepreneurs that are navigating in similar circumstances and contexts?
Just a little bit about our impacts very fast. We have been able to sell 2 million pads despite the war here in Cameroon. And we have also educated more than 1 million schoolgirls on menstrual hygiene management and created 100 jobs for women along the entire value chain. We have also been able to distribute 1 million pads to internally displaced women and girls through partnerships with local NGOs. And how did we do that? I had to go and revisit my why. The coronavirus and then the war here in Cameroon, there were times of great instability and fear. But I had to go back as a founder and dig deeper and deeper to find out, why did I start? What is that spark? What is that thing that kept me up at night? And my purpose for starting KujaEcoPads was to end period poverty by providing girls access to affordable sanitary pads. And so in 2018, when the war had degenerated into an armed conflict, the American embassy issued a warning for all Americans to go back. I went back, and in 2 weeks, I was back in Cameroon because I needed to produce pads for girls, because menstruation never stopped in a war or a pandemic. So I had to come back and turn my living room into a mini factory so I could make pads for girls. And I did one of these things. I decided deliberately to change my leadership skill and lead by action and not position. If we had to go to the farms and get banana stems, I was leading. I was carrying it and putting in the truck. I was leading. I was ahead leading. And I made sure that my leadership skill was the best. I made sure that I was kind and treated my workers with kindness. Many times workers feel that bosses, they feel that they are the bosses, the CEOs, they are just right up there and their workers are down there. At this time, I removed that hat of I'm the CEO and placed it down, and decided to create an environment where my workers feel a toxic-free environment, where my workers feel comfortable at work. I treated them with respect and dignity. I was impartial and ensure a fair and equity environment for my workers. And so I want to encourage everyone out there, all the CEOs and founders, that if you are that kind of boss, you have a military kind of rule, you kind of mean because you think if you're simple, people will take you for granted. I want to encourage you to try kindness, because this became the recipe for bountiful outcomes and high productivity for KujaEcoPads during these trying times. So try kindness.
Thank you so much, Marie-Claire. I'm taking away the importance of psychological resilience, and the way to bolster it is really reinforcing your why and your purpose, and really leading with kindness and reevaluating the importance of evolving as a leader. So thank you very much, Marie-Claire. Martha, I want to turn to you. Food and agricultural supply chains have been hugely impacted by climate change, induced disasters, and of course, the war in Ukraine. How do you work with your stakeholders to navigate these shocks?
Well, actually, supply chains have been broken for the last 40 years. Just nobody realized that. We have been wasting food all along, and natural resources all along. It's just that COVID-19 highlighted it. We started watching it on the news. And so it was, thank God it finally came up, because those of us who were in the industry before, we will have to write under the P&L a percentage of losses that we had to factor in. I was running a banana boat per week from Ecuador to St. Petersburg every week, and we had to have a percentage of things were going to go wrong continuously. So it was happening. So the highlight came up. What I think is happening now finally is that the whole sustainability world is understanding that, well, though the GDP of food is normally of ag is 1%, 2%, 3% of a country, but that's what feeds the whole country. Without the food, there's no country. So I think finally people are starting to realize that food has to be a more local source, that it has to be more nearby, and that we have to start realizing that we have to eat more seasoned products. Let's not just try to track a peach all the way from point A to point B. Maybe we eat peaches only once a year, a couple times. So I think that the habits, the consumer habits are going to start changing, and we in the industry are going to be able to then realign better, both for the earth and for the supply chain.
Thank you, Martha. So really interesting in terms of the imperative of evolving our own consumer habits to reflect the reality of supply chains and the situation. Wietse, I want to come to you. You work a lot with governments who I mean, they have competing priorities and agendas. So how do you grow traction with government organizations, and how do you ensure you stay top of mind with these government stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's for us very relevant these days. Like community engagement, it's often seen a bit as a nice to have. Should we, involve more people, stakeholder management? But for us, it's been important or is important to actually show the return on investment also of community engagement. So that would be my advice to all the social impact entrepreneurs on this call. Try to think of a business case also for the social impact that you're trying to create. Try to put it to numbers. Try to give evidence. And the way that we are doing that, and to give you a little tactic here is, like everybody knows Spotify is here in review, and like you see it everywhere these days on social media. You listen to so many hours of this genre and so on. So try to apply that to your business. It can be a really fun way to express actually to management of your buyer what the impact is that you've been able to create. So that is something that we are doing with, I shared earlier that we work with 400 governments on digital democracy and local community engagements. So we actually try to tell them, okay, this is over the past year, how many people you've been able to engage. This is the time that you've saved by doing this in an online way compared to, the traditional town hall meetings and so on. So that would be my number one kind of advice. And then secondly, I would definitely say, make sure that you're close enough or try to think. And this is, again, something specifically for software. I don't know whether it would apply to other social impact businesses. But for us, it's important to think about the user is one person, but also think about the buyer as someone else. So in other words, try to stay close to the management, show really the value that you're creating and communicate the impact through, I heard on the previous panel, through positive storytelling. So make sure to do that in a fun way, in a clear way, but do that also in a data-driven way.
Thank you, Wietse. So that dovetails really well with what we heard previously around the importance of tailoring your communications. And you've added a very incredibly important point, which is around constantly reinforcing the value you're adding and showing how your work really helps your stakeholder achieve their own objectives. Jackie, I want to come back to you. What's your advice to other social impact and sustainability leaders within really large organizations who are being asked to reduce their budgets? In addition to your wonderful phrase, cost of inaction, how else do you navigate this really tough dilemma that large corporates are currently facing given the economic crisis?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually goes back to training. So something we're trying to work on here is, as a sustainability or social impact person, you can't always be in the room. And it's really training your SLT, your board, your executives to be the sustainability champion. So understanding when they're making those choices, the implications in a sustainability and a social impact way. Microsoft does something great where they do an internal carbon price. So do we want to do that? So when, the VP of supply chain is like, we're going to ship that, air freight it, they instantly are thinking like, oh, there is a social and a sustainability cost to these decisions. So it really, for me, is on like training and communication. And sometimes you're gonna make decisions as a business that aren't the most sustainable or aren't the most socially impactful. But central to us is our transparency, and we say we are not a sustainable beauty company. We say that, like, it's on our website. We say it in interviews, and we're like, what does that even mean anymore? Until we're confident in what that means, we won't ever use that phrase. So it's really understanding like which decisions, what's the cost of your decision, and do you still want to make it?
Fantastic. So a few T's there: training, trust, and transparency. And I think a little bit of humility as well, because we know there is a backlash against ESG in the corporate world because we've kind of diluted what it all means. Just a reminder to the audience, there is opportunity to do some Q&A. So please do send your questions out. We will tackle them in a few minutes. Marie-Claire, I want to come back to you. You talked at the very top of this event about the challenge of funding. So how do you maximize your limited resources? How do you prioritize to really ensure that you're maximizing for impact? And how are you looking at this for 2023?
So we have a strategy. We plan to be very cost conscious. We plan to train a team in-house, and grow organically, because it's quite expensive to to hire, especially now that most expats are out of the region because of the war. So we plan to grow organically. We train a team of, for instance, now we are training a team of digital marketing experts in-house. And then the next part is that we plan to plant our own banana farm. You would think that banana is agro waste, people will just give it to us, but that's not true. When we came, we thought we could maybe ask for donations, or they can give it for us for very cheap, because normally it's agro waste and it's gonna be left to rot. But they started trying to exploit others. They thought we're making a lot of money from their parts, so they started selling it very expensive. And then we ended up buying banana fibers more than we were buying other raw materials, which was not really good. So in the next couple of months, we'll be planting our own farm. That will ensure sustainability, and then it will cut a lot of costs as well. Then we also plan to work with a lot of volunteers from the Bamenda University and Polytech. We already work with some of them who come and help to cut banana stem and carry them to the center, and also for extraction. And then we have a lot of interns who have already signed in to work with us during the summer. We'll be taking position in marketing and sales. And then we plan to partner with local bike owners, who can do delivery of your parts for us, because we only have one bike which does delivery. But we recently we started working with some of them. We have about 20, but we plan to do more. They just come and collect the parts and deliver to the homes of people who have ordered for parts. So those are some of the strategies we plan to use in 2023.
No, that's fantastic. And I think you've highlighted an incredibly important point, which is the importance of partnerships in this. I want to stay on the topic of funding. And Martha, I want to turn to you. You have successfully raised funds during the uncertainty of the pandemic. What's your advice to the listeners here in terms of how to seek capital? What would your advice be to entrepreneurs who are looking to fundraise in this uncertain time?
I think the biggest success we have had is the fact that we have lined up ourselves up to every incubator and accelerator that exists in this world, literally, because it has pushed us every single time to internally evaluate what we're doing. Because these tough questions from incubators and accelerators and all these organizations continue to ask, what do you do? How do you do? Why do you do what do you do? And believe it or not, month to the next month, things change because you're maturing the business and you're starting to be more, you start seeing it better as you start getting through that. And I have to tell you, I remember the first application I did 3.5 years ago. And I remember it was a long one. It took me forever. Now I can fill one in minutes because my mind is clear. I'm able to now, through that process, be able to do that. That's number one. Number two, the fact that you get these amazing mentors in these programs. There are 20,000 mentors in this world. But if you latch to 1 or 2 or 3 per incubator or accelerator, it is just amazing what it does for your business and for yourself. So I think that those two things, the combination of being able to get into this program, get into the programs, sometimes we have been rejected twice and we get on the third one. Because it's like a tournament and you have to keep going and going until you get in. So I would say get into every incubator, accelerator. There's so many now. Many of them don't take a piece of your company. Try not to be on those who take a piece of your company unless they're the Y Combinators of the world. And even at that point, you should think, and the mentors, because it will keep reshaping your business plan, reshaping your deck, and reshaping what is it that you want to do. And then the third thing that I'll say is the famous OKRs. And I never knew about them until I got into this whole world of technology. I kind of knew my business in the past, but the famous OKRs that were developed by the Silicon Valley world really keeps you so focused on what you're doing that it is not even funny. It's just like follow that book and that whole John Doerr's thinking process, and you start exponentially growing, because at the end of the day, what the investors want to see is growth and sales and sales in a scalable form.
Terrific. Thank you. Marie-Claire, I'll come to you in just a moment, but what I heard, Martha, you say was basically take advantage of all the resources that are out there. and recognize that social capital can turn into financial capital. So incredibly important to build your networks and have those mentors in place. And it reminds me of the old adage that you need to fall in love with the solution you're trying. You need to fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve rather than the solution that you're proposing. Marie-Claire, what did you want to add to the conversation about
I just
funding?
wanted to add to what Martha was saying about incubator programs and accelerators. You know, that's what helped us during this time, because I applied for a lot of them. Even though I failed a lot of them, I still was able to get into some. They have good programs, and they also have seed capital that can help to grow your enterprise. They have a lot of information for personal growth and for enterprise growth. So that's what I wanted to add. That is that it has been very helpful for us.
Terrific. So a +1 on incubators and accelerators. Wietse, I want to come back to you in terms of, the fact that governments are often subject to change, the priorities of governments are ever evolving. How do you navigate the challenges of working with government?
Yeah, it's important to know that we actually work always with the administrative level. So we always work with the administration, now with the political level. So everyone, I don't know whether there are some people here working with the public sector, but I would definitely advise you to do that, because at the start, we did a lot of like fancy projects. We had thousands of participants, but we actually saw there was no continuity, and that actually, there's a change of management or a change of political leadership. And then it's one flashy project, but it's basically window dressing because there is no continuity. So that's why we're working also with the administration to really try to more institutionalize citizen participation into the way that they are making decisions. And so that would be definitely my advice for anyone working with public sector. Try to work with the administrative level, and also try to work on building capacity within the organization. Our clients, they often say, okay, actually through CitizenLab, we are more connected to the other departments, because as you might know, governments, they are very siloed and they work in all their different departments. But participation and community engagement is one thing that actually connects the different departments. And it's kind of an asset that we are bringing to them, that we provide a platform for them to collaborate. So working a lot on like internal organization, adoption across the different departments, and building capacity within government, because it's also a lot of change management. It's a lot of changing the culture and breeding the culture of engagement within governments.
Thank you so much, Wietse. It really dovetails nicely with Jackie's message around the importance of building the capacity and knowledge of your stakeholders, because they might not have line of sight of the whole picture. So audience, we've got just a few minutes, so we probably have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So please do send in the chat. While we wait for a question from you all, I want to do a quick rapid fire to the panel. So we've had a really great discussion in terms of concrete, actionable tips for those listening. I wonder what your top tip is for social impact and sustainability leaders to stay resilient in the face of uncertainty. Wietse, since your microphone is unmuted, let's go with you first.
Yeah, looking at 23, what I was thinking is, as we're going into a recession, a lot of us probably you will have to do more with less. You're still thinking growth. You're still thinking, how can we, as we talked about, how can we scale sales? How can we scale impact? But you might have to do it with smaller budgets, or your buyer might have smaller budgets. So taking a bit the glass half full approach here, I think it's an opportunity for us as entrepreneurs to find focus, to find clarity, to actually rethink, because everybody, I'm sure that this webinar, this panel is kind of in the midst of your strategic planning for the next year. It's a good opportunity to think about, okay, all those initiatives, if I review like what I wanted to do last year, how many of those initiatives have I been able to deliver, and to try to push yourself to really make bolder choices and to really prioritize in a clear way. So my advice would be, given the macroeconomics, let's grab this opportunity, seize the opportunity to find a deeper focus.
Amazing. So prioritize and find creative ways to make more with less. Thank you, Wietse. Martha, what is your top tip for entrepreneurs to stay resilient in these challenging times?
I met the creator of Snoopy, Mr. Charles Schulz, many years ago. because I'm a cartoonist first. And I walked in with 200 characters, cartoon characters. And he said, think how many characters are in Snoopy. And it's like 4 characters, right? 5. There are a lot of sites, but there are 4, Charlie Brown, Snoopy. And he said, when you have only 4 or 5, your creativity is very focused. And you develop more the characters, you develop more the substance of the characters. Well, it's the same thing for business. The least, the more you create. And it tends to be that normally when you tend to do that, all of a sudden you have too much free time, but it's not free time. It's time to create more around what is your focus on whatever you're doing. So I follow that heavily after Mr. Charles Schulz told me that.
Amazing. So a +1 on focus and prioritization. Marie-Claire?
Well, my take home is I know this crisis are times of insurmountable obstacles and challenges, and fears as well, but your venture should not stop during this time. It is instead time for you to dig deeper and deeper into your soul, to find the courage, the faith, the strength, and the fortitude to lead your team along for the greater good of humanity, And when you're doing this, make sure to be kind, because kindness is going to take you and your team along. Don't give up, don't quit. Yeah.
Amazing advice. And Marie-Claire, there's a question for you in the chat, which is, what would you say to a young entrepreneur that wants to do something similar, working with banana fibers and sanitary pads? What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who has gaps when it comes to knowledge and funding, in addition to the don't give up imperative you just gave us?
Actually, we have a franchise model we are working on. So we can only work on a franchise model. I'm working with my mentors at Silicon Valley on a franchise model. However, Rome was not built in a day. So if you start, you just have to keep building, keep building and don't give up. And I can also give advice. I can coach. I can do some coaching to that kind of person because I've been helped by other people. So I'd love to give some coaching in that area.
Kindness in action, Marie-Claire. Thank you very much. Jackie, I want to not only ask you about your top tip for resilience in the face of uncertainty, but I also want to ask you a question that's just come up on the chat, which is around what initiatives are you finding customers more tuned into or requesting? Where is the customer demand when it comes to sustainability that you're seeing from your company? So 2 questions for you, Jackie.
I'd say definitely using our voice. Our saying is beauty is using your voice. So really asking us to use our privilege. It's what we like to call it, because we have a large engaged social media platform. We have staff are engaged. So asking us to really lean our voice to really big social problems in the world. And then the sustainability side, I'd say what every beauty company would probably say, packaging and climate change. So that's kind of holistic. And then in terms of my advice, I had written some very corporate answers, but I think listening to everybody, the common thread we all have is that we're passionate. And I think people get into this work, more than likely you do it, especially at this point of our careers, because you're passionate. And for me, it is really hard when you wake up every day and you read COP27 news and you read war news and everything, and even listening to Marie-Claire and your challenges and are just, you're dealing with a war, right? Thinking about what I deal with every day. And I think for me, what I've been finding is taking time away to find my purpose and why I'm doing this is really, really important. And even as a business, that's the exercise we're going in and going who do we want to be? How do we want to show up in the world? So I'd say tying into that purpose has just been central to help us as a business and myself to keep trucking along.
Amazing. So finding your purpose and kind of reorienting yourself to your purpose. We are almost out of time, but I'm going to take the moderator's imperative and ask one more question, super rapid fire. And that's, what is your call to action to those listening? You guys have great and amazing tips, really actionable insights, but what's your call to action to listeners? Jackie, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
I'd say, don't get overwhelmed and don't give up. It takes a village. And I think we all have to, governments, companies, individuals have to hold each other and ourselves accountable, because if we really actually want change, it's the only way.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Marie-Claire, what is your call to action for those listening?
My call to action is don't give up and have the ability to self-motivate and to bounce back from adversity. Don't let anything, failure or rejections, to deter you. Keep going.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Martha, what would be your call to action to the audience?
The call to action is definitely find the real reason you're doing this for. The reason I'm doing Agtools is because we have a lot of children without food while we're wasting food. That's really the core of my business. Yes, it's financials, it's about money, but it's the fact that in my country, in Colombia, my parents had to educate kids that had no food in their tummies while we were wasting food. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Thank you. Very, very powerful, reinforcing that message of just reorienting yourself with your purpose and remembering that. Wietse, what's your call to action?
I want to echo everything that the three ladies said right now. Just every day, when you have a difficult day and when you wake up, just remind yourself of why you're doing it, follow your purpose. And I take away from Marie-Claire's message, and always do it with kindness.
Wonderful. I hope you agree that this was a fantastic panel. So many rich insights in terms of reinforcing yourself with your purpose, finding ways to stay resilient, applying kindness as a leadership tactic, ensuring that you're tailoring your messaging and communications to your stakeholders, recognizing the need to build the capacity of your stakeholders and leaders, and just generally always being curious and humble when trying to tackle these really, really complex challenges in such uncertain times. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Marie-Claire. Thank you, Martha. And thank you, Wietse, for an amazing conversation. And Tom, back to you.
Thank you, Payal. That was beautifully summarized. And thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Jackie, Martha, Marie-Claire, and Wietse. Really appreciate it. It was a great discussion.